You can always grab the B-roll later, but that interview is where it's all happening. So it really is about that interview, getting that right. And there's a lot of ways to do that right, and there's a lot of ways to do that wrong. I see a lot of things that look amazing, but it's not human.
Welcome back to another episode of the iFilmmaker Podcast. My name is Ariel Martinez. On this episode, I'm super excited. We are interviewing Rick Altizer. He's the director of this new film called Show Me the Father. I'm excited to have Rick here to discuss this film and the story because it's a very, very powerful story, or stories throughout the entire film. But it's very, very powerful based on fatherhood, a message that I firmly believe in. And I'm very excited to actually interview him because he's actually living out the dream that I really want to do, which is have faith-based documentaries. So I'm personally very excited for this interview. But at the same time, Rick is also sharing some really great practical approaches to storytelling, to interviewing, and his whole approach on this film and how he got to this part of his career. So it's really, really cool to hear from him and how he was able to work with the Kendrick Brothers. If you're not aware, the Kendrick Brothers are a big name right now in Christian films. They directed and produced films like Fireproof, Courageous, Flywheel, Facing the Giants. So all these are great films that in the Christian community are big, big names. So I'm excited to have Rick Altizer on the show. I'm going to stop rambling now, and I'm going to get into my interview with Rick Altizer. Rick Altizer, thank you so much for coming on the iFilmmaker Podcast.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
Super excited to have you. Really, really big fan. And I, been loving your work, but also your most recent film, Show Me the Father. We're definitely going to get into that. Want to talk more about that. But before we get started with that, if you could just go ahead and sort of give us an overlay of the scope of your work and sort of how you got started in your career.
Well, I started out as a recording artist. So I have music projects. I'm a musician. I play all the instruments. And so I have 6, 7, 8 albums or whatever out. But kind of transitioned into film, when the music industry after 2008 started tanking and you couldn't sell plastic anymore. And that was pretty much making music by selling products. You kind of became an end. We found an end to that. I transitioned into films, and one thing led to another, and I ended up directing for the first time a Christian comedian by the name of Shonda Pierce, and really had no idea of how that happened, but it did. I ended up directing a documentary that went into theaters. It was a Fathom event, and
wow,
the number 5 movie in America the night it came out, and did really well. So from there, did four documentaries. They were all Fathom events. They were all in theaters for one night. And then the Kendrick Brothers, which are Christian filmmakers who've made War Room, Courageous, Fireproof, they saw a movie I made for Russ Taff called I Still Believe that was in theaters, and they really liked that. And so they hired me to make this, which was my first widescreen, main theatrical. It's in about 1,100 theaters nationwide for a 2-week run. So I've done 5 documentaries. All 5 have been in theaters, but 4 of them were Fathom events. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not.
A Fathom event is where AMC, Regal, and Cinemark cinemas all got together and said, hey, let's put events on like Tuesday and Thursday nights. We won't call them movies because we don't want to compete with the movie companies that provide us with our income. But let's call, on a low turnout Tuesday night, let's put on our own events. So you'll see the Metropolitan Opera, you'll see the Bolshoi Ballet. I don't know if you've been to the movie theater and you see those ads for the opera or the ballet. All the time. And it's just for one night, October 3rd, at 7 p.m. 1 or 2 nights. So that's what we did with the 4 movies that I did prior to this one. They were in theaters, like 800 theaters across the nation, but just for one night or 2 nights, 7:00 on a Tuesday and 7:00 on a Thursday, one showing on each night. But everybody's playing it at the same time. So that's a Fathom event.
Okay.
So did 4 of those, and then this one was distributed by Sony, so it's my first, main theatrical.
Wow, that's interesting. I think I've been to a few Fathom events with my church. Didn't know that was the official name, and sort of that's kind of what it went. Where basically, we go there for a one night showing, and that's pretty much it. So that's pretty interesting to know about that. And so this has been for this movie, this wasn't worldwide. You said it was about 800 theaters for Show Me the Father.
Show Me the Father is the Fathom events were here just in the States, and they were in about 800 theaters. Show Me the Father's in about 1,100 theaters, and then it is also going to go worldwide. It's in Singapore now. Okay. Next month, it's going to be going in through all of Latin America and Brazil as well. So it's funny watching the video with the different people go in and record the voiceover in their own language, and it's pretty awesome to watch it.
They dub it
in Portuguese or whatever. So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Every time I see those Spanish subtitled, those dubbed Spanish movies, it's pretty funny when it's not the actual person talking.
Yeah, it's great. But what a blessing and an honor to have this movie on screens all over America and then all over the world. It's pretty humbling and,
wow. So
it's amazing.
It's insane. So you started filmmaking in 2008.
No, I didn't really start. No, I don't think I started filmmaking till around 2014, 2015.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So it was in 8 when the music industry was kind of in decline because people were not.
Yeah, that's when everything.
Copies. Okay,
right,
but you didn't get into it
tanked
until 2014. You said.
Yeah, about 2014, 2015. Yeah,
wow.
I had been working for a Christian comedian by the name of Shonda Pierce. I've been helping her with some music projects for her, and also I'd done a little bit of video work with her, like, hey, Tulsa, Oklahoma, I'm coming into your town. I'll be there, on whatever date. And I would put those little videos together for her. And so she said to me, Rick, I want to make movies. And I said, well, gosh, I can't help you make a movie, but we can do a demo tape. And I don't know if you remember way back in the day when you'd want to get a record deal, you do a little cassette. You put your 3 songs on a cassette tape, right?
That's
back
all
in the day.
Yeah.
So you do 3 songs on a cassette tape, and you'd send that to the record company. And if the record company liked what they heard, they would say, hey, why don't you come into our studio and let's put you in with a real studio with a real producer, and let's do a few more songs. And so I said, why don't I'll go on the road with you for a weekend and get 5 minutes, and maybe we'll send it to some people and maybe they'll like it. And I had never had a film class. I'd never wanted to do films. I never wanted to be a director. I haven't had one course, one class, nothing.
Wow. Okay.
No training. But I saw my son, Dave Mays, which is a cool name, but and he was doing wedding videos.
Yeah.
And I saw what he was doing there, telling little stories, and he had the DSLR point and shoot. So I had a little T3i camera.
Yes.
And a Sigma 30 millimeter fixed lens, and one of those $20 shoulder mounts that, it was like $20 or whatever.
Right.
And so I went on the road with her for a weekend and ended up putting together 16 minutes on the road with her and her life. A lot of really heavy things were going on in her life personally, and we got into a lot of that. And it turns out that interviewing and getting deep things out of people was just, was something I could do. I didn't know that was there. And so I put 16 minutes together, and her manager and her took me to a pizza joint in Nashville. I still remember where we were.
Yeah.
and they said, Rick, we love this. We think you need to make this. We don't want anybody else to make this. You need to do this. And can you do this? And I kind of gulped and, went into a panic attack inside. But on the outside, it was like, gulp, sure.
Oh, man.
I thought it was going to be for her, just for her product table, right? She
Right.
goes on tour and does these comments. I figured it's going to be in her product table. Well, she had lost her a booking agent had run off with some of her money, and
Wow.
all of her bookings kind of fell through, and she's like $200,000 in the hole. And all of a sudden they're putting $250,000 in marketing this movie, and it's going to be a Fathom event, and it's going to be on screens. And the pressure was just, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was literally making it up as I went.
Wow.
And, but we had a good editor. I brought in what I thought was a rough edit. He goes, this isn't a rough edit. You edited a movie. So he gave me an editor credit, and it did really well. It was, like I said, it's called Laughing in the Dark. It's on Amazon Prime. You can watch it.
Wow.
Her husband, her daughter had become estranged from her and didn't let her communicate with her or her grandchild. And her husband was so distraught over this that he started drinking. And then as we're making this movie, he literally drank himself to death.
Wow.
So what starts out as this movie about a woman who, funny comedian on the road, Christian comedian, it turns into a whole other story of how do you navigate your life and your faith when everything blows up. I mean, everything. She lost everything. So
Wow.
very, very different kind of movie, very powerful movie. And it's still, like I said, it's still on Amazon Prime. Shonda Pierce, Laughing in the Dark. You can see it.
Mm-hmm.
But don't judge me. Half the shots are me on autofocus. I've got the T3i on autofocus, right? But coming from a music background, have a recording studio, I was able to get audio clean. So I was able to get the feed off the board when she's doing live. I was able to get a good clean feed off the audio board.
There you go.
So her live concert sounded great. And when I'm interviewing her, I've got a little Rode lavalier going to a Zoom H1, $100 Zoom H1 in her pocket.
That
right?
works. That works. I remember
It worked.
those.
I got good clean audio, and what I found out, which I didn't know, of course, is that when you're doing film, audio is more important than video.
There you go. You learned a very important one there.
You can have messed up footage, but if your audio's bad, you're done.
Yeah.
You can't use it.
Very
you can't
true.
use it. So I couldn't let technical prowess get in the way. There was no technical prowess for me to have. I mean, I'm filming things on autofocus, for crying out loud. And so David did come in halfway through, and then he did film stuff, and all the stuff in the movie that looks semi-decent, that's David with his little Black Magic pocket cinema camera.
There you
go. We did that, right? Shoot on 1080, right? Our 1080 Black Magic pocket cinema camera. But that was, so that's how that kind of started. And then it just kind of went from there. And I guess the last 6-7 years, probably,
Wow.
I've been doing this. So done 5 projects in 7 years. That sounds about right. Maybe 8. That's about right.
Has Dave been able to help you out on any of the shooting?
Yeah, well, he helped me on the first 3 that I did, and then he went out to L.A.
Right.
He lived in L.A. for a while. I'm in Nashville.
Right.
So then I lost him there, and now he's back in Nashville. Came back in February. We had done most of our filming for Show Me the Father by February, but he's has a job now that is keeping him pretty busy. So I haven't had an opportunity to work with him on the last 2.
Got it.
Really, but I always loved. I gave him the director of photography credit, and he's so good, so talented. The shots look so good. Him and a camera, man, he can do great stuff.
That's awesome.
It's great having a son, that can make things look so good.
And that's great.
That helped.
And it's I don't want to say ironic, because I think that everything has a purpose, but it's great that both of you can bond through this same art form of cinematography and filmmaking. That's fantastic.
It's a real gift to be able to work with my son. And So the Russ Taff movie, it's called Russ Taff, I Still Believe. It's on YouTube. You can stream it now.
Fantastic.
We have a company that's put out, and they've put it up just for free. You can just stream it for free.
I'll be putting all the
YouTube.
links to all of these in the show notes for this episode.
Oh, great.
Absolutely.
And David did all the cool handheld shots. That's all David.
That's good. So documentary filmmaking requires really good storytelling, right? So that's a very important aspect of it. So like you said, it's not about the talent behind the camera, but it's really approaching story. You obviously know how to tell a story. I saw the film. I saw Show Me the Father. Very well done storytelling. How did you unfold this talent of storytelling?
Well, what I do when I do interviews is I don't go in with notes.
Okay.
I'm not sitting there looking at a sheet while the guy's talking to me, reading off of a sheet of paper while someone, I do eye contact, I engage, and it's just a conversation like you and I are having right now, So I make a point to listen and to not go in with preconceived ideas of what I want this to be or what I want to hear, but to ask questions, to let them talk and then engage with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe give them I'll hear some things that I know are going to connect dots with somebody else that somebody else might have said a month earlier.
Sure.
And so I might give them some things to help connect a few dots for them and then say, would you comment on that? In the movie Show Me the Father, Stephen talks about his daughter who he went to China to adopt.
Mm-hmm.
They're on the plane and she's screaming and crying, the whole plane ride back from China to New York. And he said, she doesn't know who she is.
Mm.
She doesn't know she's Mia Elizabeth Kendrick. And as he was saying that, I was connecting with that going, man, there's so many of us
Mm-hmm.
who don't know who we are.
That's right.
We don't know that God's our Father.
Right.
There's so many of us who don't believe, we're functional orphans. So then I was able to have a talk with Stephen. Then after he talked about that, then say, well, so many of us don't know who we are. And we go to church but we don't really believe, or we struggle with God because we had a rough relationship with our dad or whatever. And we struggle with just the whole concept of God.
Yeah.
And we're functional orphans. We just don't believe we have a dad, And so I will have this kind of conversation with him. Then I'll say, would you like to comment on that? Would you comment on that? So then he'll basically kind of re-say what I just said, but it helps connect dots.
Right.
And so listening, paying attention, being engaged, having it conversational, being able to get them to be relaxed and not. A lot of times these professional speakers, like we talked to Tony Evans, who's a pastor, and he's used to getting up on in front of thousands of people and doing his thing, right? And so there's an art to getting them to not do their thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want their thing. I don't want them to get up there and do their thing. I want them to just be a regular human being and maybe get something deeper.
Okay.
That you wouldn't get when they're doing their thing. So being able to say, hey, this is just a conversation. I know that, and maybe even say, I know that you're such an amazing speaker and public speaker and you have a way you can talk, but I don't want to do that for this. This is just you and me going to, a restaurant and we're sitting across a table from each other and we're just talking, so if I can put them at ease. And another way I do that, we're just rambling all over the place here, but another way I do that is I don't go in with a big crew. I go in with two guys, me and two guys. I don't want 30 people showing up or 20 people showing up. I do two guys. They do the lights. They're the two cameramen. They do lights. I kind of handle sound because I'll set up the boom mic and do that myself. Sit down and have a conversation, and it is comfortable. We usually do it in their home. I don't try to get a real fancy, showy location. I don't want a big, something looks at us, I don't know.
Right.
Like it's some kind of ad, like you're doing some kind of advertisement. I don't want some big fancy location because then it's just going to be, they're not going to feel comfortable. I like them in their home. I like them in a comfortable setting. It might not look as cool, but what I get is better. I get better. It's more intimate. It's more relational.
Right.
And what I do now, there are different kinds of documentaries. There's different kinds of stories and different ways to tell a story. Some people tell a story very informationally. I'm giving you the information. Did you know this? And did you know that? And this happened and this happened. It's just kind of information. But for me, what I do is relational. I like to relate. And so instead of communicating information, I'm focusing on communicating feelings. How did that feel when that happened?
There you go.
What were you feeling when that happened? So I did an interview with Shonda Pierce and her husband, who at the time were separated. She was doing the tough love as he was struggling with his alcoholism. And we did an interview with them, and Dave said afterwards, "Dad, that was like a counseling session." And it was a lot of my interviews are counseling sessions. And after that interview, they moved back in together, so I was able to help them process some things. So what I find when you interview someone, if you can help them process, as the camera's rolling, they're discovering something about themselves that they might not have ever really discovered before. And if you can capture that, that is amazing, because that really draws you in, because we relate to that. We relate to how things feel and how things are. And there was a lot of emotion in Show Me the Father. I mean, anytime you start talking about dads, you're opening up.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be, I love my dad so much. I miss him. I had such a great relationship with my dad, or my dad wounded me so bad.
Right.
But either way, it's emotional. So being able to tap that emotion, to find that emotion in the story, and to communicate it without it getting too sappy, which I hope we didn't. I don't think we did. But to me, that's the power of what a doc film can do that other things can't do. There's stuff in Show Me the Father. I don't want to give anything away,
Right.
but there's stuff in it that if we were going to do a scripted piece and I was to say, "Oh, let's do this," you'd go, "Oh, no way. You'd never believe that.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous." And what makes it so powerful is that it's true.
It's real.
And so there's a couple of what moments in a couple of them that you go,
Yeah.
"Oh my goodness!" People.
Yeah.
You're hearing audible gasps.
Right.
You're hearing audible gasps in the audience. So, so those are important for me. And different people do different kinds of things, but for me, I want to do relational pieces
Right.
that communicate big truths, that communicate something big. So with Russ Taff, he talked about his alcoholism. He was a Christian recording artist, a secret alcoholic, living in hiding, going to church and pretending everything's okay. So we wanted to make a piece that would help people come out of hiding. Hey, if you're struggling with something, come out of hiding and talk to someone about it. And so that's helped a lot of people who've struggled with addiction issues. And so many people struggle with fatherhood issues,
Right.
and how they relate to God. And it's a big topic. And so we wanted to make something that would be big, that
Right.
would help people. And to me, that's so fulfilling, is to seeing now how the people who've seen it, how they're reacting, and people who haven't talked to their dad in 20 years are calling and reconnecting with their dad because they saw this movie. And now there's reunions and
Right.
things happening, and
Such a needed
people
movie.
are having major spiritual encounters with God after seeing this.
Right.
So, that to me,
so good.
That's it. That's why we did it.
Amazing.
And, any other accolades it gets or whatever, just,
Right. And how much is it easier? Do you feel that it's easier to tell this story or stories when you have you're invested in this is a message that you can really relate to. This is a message that, like I've said, for me in my church, we have a big men's ministry there. This is something that is right up our alley. When you are hired to do a film like this for a message that you really, really believe in, does that make it much easier to tell this story?
Well, yeah, I mean, my own personal journey is all through it. And, I wrote it. And so much of my own journey with God was a part of this. And I do feel like so much has kind of happened in my life that's prepared me to do this. Like I never knew why I was making documentaries. I didn't know why in the world. I never even wanted to make documentaries. Why in the world am I making documentaries? And I think it was to do this movie.
Wow.
I think God was preparing me to make this.
That's good.
And so anyway, I what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Does it help you? Does it help you to make a film like this when you yourself know and really truly believe in the message, the overall message that the film is telling?
Sure. I mean, we didn't really know when we started this. We started this December of 2019, before COVID, right before COVID hit. We started doing this.
Okay.
And we didn't really know what it was going to be about. We just knew we wanted to do something on the fatherhood of God. And I knew that I wanted to highlight how we look at God. We have this lens, and on this lens or this piece of glass is an image of our earthly dad.
Right.
And we look at God through that lens, and we project onto God these traits of our dad. And so we struggle with God because we think he's like our dad, and he's not. And so, our work is to erase that image of our earthly dad so that we can see God for who he is. So we actually included that in Show Me the Father. We included that. We kind of filmed that and did that. But that was kind of going into it. That was what I wanted to communicate with the film, was we struggle with how we connect with God based on our own relationships with our own earthly dad. And so many times we project on God traits of our dad, and also recognizing that we're orphans. So those are things that going into it, I wanted to be able to, this is what I would like to talk about. And so then we get these different stories. People start their stories. You have no idea. The Sherman Smith and the Dylan McCullough and the other stories, we had no idea we were going to get any of that.
Really?
And with every documentary, you just have no idea how it's going to turn out. Every one I've ever done, you think it's going to start one thing and it just turns into something completely different. And things come your way and things come along that you weren't planning on. We weren't planning on Shonda's husband dying in the middle of our and this story came to us. Some of these stories came to us that we had no idea. And then it just turns out Sherman loves the Lord and he's a strong believer. And it's like, oh my goodness, what an amazing story. And just these things that we had no concept going into that this is what we were going to do.
Right.
So you film, you do your interviews, you follow what you got. Obviously with that story, it meant we needed to talk to Dylan and his mom and Sherman's wife and Dylan's wife. And, so there's all these other things that we now had to do when that story came along. And then other stories came to us and we filmed that and followed those through. And so by October of last year, okay, here's all of our, I've got books and books and books, notebooks, they're here, maybe 2 feet full of 8.5 by 11 transcripts,
Wow.
And so then comes the arduous process of going through all the transcripts. And then, because I've got 12 documentaries in there, maybe 15.
With everything you
recorded?
recorded?
So the question is, I could make maybe 15 different documentaries.
Right.
So the big question is, okay, I've got 90 minutes. What am I going to make? And so that's the big culling, huge. We had everything transcribed. I put it all on 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. And then I highlighted the things I liked, right? Then I took all those highlights out and I made another document, all these other documents. Then I highlighted again, took those out. Same thing, made another document with the double highlighted. Then I did it a third time.
Right.
So I'm whittling down. And then, hang on, don't go away.
Go ahead.
And then I'll see if this plays on this. And then I took all of my the pieces that I highlighted and set them on these 4x6 index cards.
Okay.
And so then I've got all the index cards in here. And so now here's all the pieces that I'm going to use now for my movie. And then I just start moving things around in the index card box. And I made all this up. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know this is called a paper edit.
Yeah.
I had never heard the word paper edit. And I had an editor tell me, Rick, they have like teams of like 12 people who do this, don't you? I went, no. He goes, that's called a paper edit. But I like the index cards because I can move them around. I can create chapter headings and I can kind of tell the story that way. So everything to me is story. It's story. I don't worry about the B-roll. As a matter of fact, I put in the schedule time to shoot B-roll after editing. So I'll get my story right, and then we'll do an edit with just talking heads with no B-roll. And then I say, okay, we need this B-roll, we need that, we need that.
Right.
So I'll go and put in the schedule, we're going to edit for 2 weeks or whatever, and then I want 3 weeks off to go do some B-roll and grab, because I never really know what I'm going to use until I get to this point.
Of course.
I've got so many stories. We interviewed Eddie George. We got all kinds of stories about Eddie and different football players and different things that we had. Some of it we used and some of it we didn't. So I don't want to go spend a lot of time filming B-roll on things I'm not going to use.
Right.
So, but yeah, story. It's all, and nothing can get in the way of that. Nothing. And you have to fight for it.
Right.
That nothing can trump story, ever.
When you sat down on these interviews, you said you didn't know what you were going to get.
Right.
How did you approach the questioning to get what you got? Did you sort of started pulling on threads, opportunities?
Well, I knew. Yeah, I kind of knew what the stories were. I didn't do pre-interviews. I don't want to have somebody tell me something and then have them tell me again now that the camera's on and now all of a sudden they're performing it. So I didn't want any performances. So I'll meet him and we'll talk and I'll try to get, I had lunch with Sherman and we tried to get, but if they start getting into the story, it's like, you know what, let's wait on that. Tell me that later, We just kind of get to know each other. They get to know me. I talk about my heart and what I want to do and what my focus is and what I'm looking to do, so that they understand me a little bit, so that they feel comfortable around me. And so I think that is a huge thing, is if I can help them to feel comfortable with me,
right,
so that they can trust me. And so I'm locking eyes. My eyes are locked,
That's good.
Just when we're having that conversation, we'll have a 3-hour conversation and it wears me out. I mean, I'm worn out by the time it's done because I'm engaged.
Yeah.
My eyes are locked. I'm, I'm giving facial, like I'm hearing them and I'm giving them all kinds of validation
Right.
when they're talking about
That's
something
tiring.
hurtful, and oh, really? And I'm, so I'm trying to be animated, but engaged with them.
Right.
And I find that when we have that engagement, they open up and they're able to share things that they wouldn't think they would share in front of a camera. And that's, to me, that's the key, is getting the story underneath the story. Which is, here's what happened. Okay, that's a story. Here's what happened. All right. But here's how it made me feel. Now that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
And that's something that now you're bringing it into a relationship thing. Now I'm being vulnerable with you, and I'm telling you how I process that emotionally. That's a whole other level of just, here's some information. So being able to, I've been married for 36 years. So I've had a lot of work at figuring out how to communicate well. Still haven't figured it out, in case you're wondering.
Oh, man.
Still haven't figured that one out, but I work real hard at it. I
Got
do.
it.
And but those skills all come in handy. I mean, it's very much, I think a good interviewer is a great listener. And a good interviewer will be a counselor, somebody that's helping people process their feelings and emotions and being able to learn how to verbalize it. So those are all, and that's the particular thing I do. You know, when you see the five docs I've made,
Right.
you see that there's an emotion to it. People are crying, right? When we showed it at the first time we ever showed it was at the Southern Baptist Convention with 800 pastors, 800 in a room. We showed it to 800 people. First time an audience had ever seen it, there was a man in front of me and he was sobbing. I mean, his head was he was visibly, literally shaken. And we talked afterwards and he shared his fatherhood story, but it hit him. But that's what you saw. That's
what the film does.
Yeah, that's what it does. And that's what's so powerful about film is that it can connect cerebrally and emotionally at the same time.
Right.
A film will do something that a sermon can't do. It does something that a book can't do. Books and sermons are great at communicating information and doing things, but or public speaking or whatever, but there's just something about a film that connects thought and emotion and helps you process it in a way that's so powerful. And when it's true, a lot of Christian films want to do that. They want to connect with you emotionally, but some of the stories you kind of feel like, that's a little, contrived and
right.
It just doesn't have the same. But this is all true. That's what makes it so powerful.
That is very
that
powerful.
We're really communicating truth.
It had so much depth in the story that it was, you just can't help. I mean, I can understand the gentleman sobbing a little bit. I think I shed a tear or two while I was watching the film, but it was that powerful. It really was that powerful, and it hits very close to the message that we've been, sort of portraying. So it was very, very powerful.
And I do want to give just a shout out to Mark Miller, the producer of the movie.
Okay.
Mark and I, we edited the movie together. So much of what you saw as far as storytelling and getting that through was Mark as well. Stephen Kendrick was also involved on the back end of just kind of finalizing some things. And he was much more, not that he didn't care about story or emotion, but he was very focused on the teaching aspect, on how things taught. So I think it was a good blend of teaching, stats, fatherhood stats. Does this thing make sense? And is this thing connecting emotionally? I think together it was all blended real well, and that's kind of what each person kind of brought. But with Mark Miller and Stephen Kendrick and myself, I really felt like that was a great team, which was different from my other movies, because the other movies were all me.
Right.
And
right.
I remember one day on the Shonda movie, I had a 18-hour day, a 20-hour day, and a 22-hour day in 1 week. And my son, in 1 week, I had a 18-hour day, a 20-hour day, and a 22-hour day.
Wow.
In a week.
Jeez.
And my son came in one day. I remember I was sitting here in my office, and he came in. This was Dave, and he said, "Don't have a heart attack, Dad." I went, "Yeah." He goes, and he looks at me. He's real serious. He goes, "Dad, don't have a heart attack." I mean, he was serious. It's like you're gonna kill yourself if you keep doing this. You got to stop.
Right.
And that was one of the things Stephen Kendrick said. He goes, "I don't want you doing those 80-hour weeks. I don't want you working like that on this. We're going to help you, or I'm going to give you help, but we don't want you doing that." So that was great that he was concerned about me in that way and showed it. And it was a total different experience on this, working with some other people. So that was great.
That's awesome that, even the creators of a film like this is not, they're living this. They're simply sharing their experiences. And that's what I mean earlier in my question, where, when you're living this and this has been your message, it's probably easier sort of to put this story together because you kind of know what you're looking for and you know how you want to put it together. And at the end, when you see the final product, you can then ask, is this the message that we've been trying to tell people? Is this how we want to sort of relate it, which is awesome. This ends up being more than just a paycheck. This ends up being the message that you're living, and it's such, in my opinion, it's an extraordinary blessing to be able to sort of have a livelihood, in the industry at the same time, helping relate the word of God. So that's phenomenal.
It's amazing. It's a real blessing. I'd gone, my wife and I started going to a new church about 6 years ago, and they had this program in it called Sonship. An older man who's one of my mentors, his name is Jeff Salison, and our pastor, Mike Graham, kind of took us through this really intense 16-week course on seeing our seeing our orphanhood, how we view God as orphans and how we don't believe, just how much unbelief we operate in. And it was so huge for me to go through this. And I credited Jeff and Mike in the credits. I gave them, I gave them credits because, that's really what this movie is. It came out of that sonship course. And so I feel like God led us to this church and led me to those two guys to take me through that personally so I could deal with some of my own fatherhood issues with God so that then I could make this movie. And then, for it to be called the Kendrick Brothers Show Me the Father, the Kendrick Brothers have such a huge market.
Right.
And then they started doing all this promo for it. They did like 200 interviews. And, it was like, man, this is great. Everybody's thinking they made it. And that's fine because they'll go buy movie tickets.
Yeah.
If they thought I made it or Mark and I made this, no one's going to buy any movie tickets to see anything we make.
Right.
So people were asking, hey, was that hurtful? Are you upset about that? And no, I'm thankful and grateful to be able to have the opportunity. And I recognize the reason it's in theaters is because it's called the Kendrick Brothers Show Me the Father.
Of course.
Yeah, that's why Sony put it in theaters.
Right.
Because their name's on it. So great, man.
Right.
It's awesome.
Do you plan / hope to make more films like this?
Yeah, I definitely do. I want to make a part 2, Show Me the Father part 2, My Father's Eyes. I want to make one for women that's focused on how Instagram and Facebook and our image and how we look and how you have to look perfect and, just what women have to go through with how they see themselves and how the society sees themselves. And now they have to be men. They can't just be women. Now they got to do all the things we do too, as if it wasn't bad enough. Now they're taking on all our junk too.
Right.
So it's really difficult. And, I know I'm a guy, but that doesn't mean I can't find women to tell this story. I think I could steward this story well. Right. Just how God sees us as opposed to what society says I need to be and how I need to look and appear. And
that's a very,
the pressure is intense.
It's a very, very needed message these days.
It is. And so I just don't think we're done with the fatherhood
That's good
message. So I've presented that to the Kendricks. I mean, of course, to get a movie in theaters is expensive.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's an investment for sure.
And so with COVID and stuff, it's still kind of up in the air on if they're going to do it again. I don't know if they will. I'd like to make that.
Yeah.
I'd like to make it.
But there's still streaming options and whatnot for projects like that still.
And so those that would influence our budget.
Sure.
You know, how it's going to be distributed then influences how you make it and how you go about doing that. So what we found out, if a movie is made for an audience 20 and under, it's doing great. It's doing great at box office. Any movie made for an audience 20 and older is suffering. Doesn't matter what it is.
Really?
Every movie for an audience 20 and up is suffering. So that audience is just not going to theaters right now. They've had a year and a half of streaming, things, and they're getting used to watching their media on, Amazon Prime and Hulu and whatever they're doing. And right now they're not going to theaters. I mean, you go and walk into a theater and it's just dead, so. But Shang-Chi's doing well. Disney Cruise did well. Things for kids are doing good. But other than that.
Got it.
Not so.
All right. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to the part 2 of Show Me the Father. Definitely want to take a look at those. Where can people find you and sort of see what you've done and sort of follow you?
Oh, you can go to my website, rickaltizer.com.
Great.
Altizer.
Great. And last thing, you also have a podcast. You have a show, don't you?
Yeah, the Rick Altizer Show. I've done about 170 interviews, and it's with Christian media makers. So, filmmakers, actors, songwriters, behind the scenes.
Awesome.
In the business.
You've had the Kendrick Brothers there as well.
I've had the Kendricks. Yep. I've had the Irwin Brothers. So a lot of filmmakers and actors. Kevin Sorbo has been on it. And of course, Shonda's been on it. Russ Taff was on it. But anyway, you can go to anywhere you listen to podcasts, look up the Rick Altizer Show.
We'll be putting links to that in the description. Rick, thanks so much for taking the time and sharing your work.
I hope this was helpful in some way. I hope this helped. I mean, I felt like I was just kind of rambling. So, I hope it was helpful.
I learned a lot in documentary storytelling, so I appreciate that. And I know definitely my audience hopefully got some nuggets out of this too, but it was definitely beneficial, I feel.
Well, I'll say for documentary storytelling, you can always grab the B-roll later, but that interview is where it's all happening. So it really is about that interview, getting that right. And there's a lot of ways to do that right, and there's a lot of ways to do that wrong. I see a lot of things that look amazing, but it's not human. It's missing. Not that it's not human, but it's missing. There's way more there that you don't get. 2 or 3 layers underneath, there's something there that's really powerful and really deep. But if you're all worried about how it looks, you're going to miss it. So it has to be how it feels, how it's feeling, what it's saying, how it's communicating. That's story. Story's not about how it looks. Story's all about how it communicates. So being aware of that when you do the interview, I want to set a stage, set a tone that's going to help this person communicate the best. And whatever they feel comfortable with sharing, I want to get as deep as they'll go. As deep as they'll go, I want to get there if they'll do it.
Thanks so much for that.
Those are things
nugget.
Things I've learned that I hope help someone. I hope someone's listening to this and goes, wow, that's really going to help me. I've got an interview next week. This is really going to help me do that interview. So
fantastic. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and sharing.
Sure, Ariel. Thanks. Thanks for wanting to hear what I had to say. I didn't do one interview for the movie.
Oh, man. Well, I'm glad we got to be the first one.
This is the first interview I've done for the movie, other than on my own show.
Oh, man.